Even in the busy marketplace of Athens, he was hard to miss. He stood over by the colonnades, sheltered from the bright afternoon sun. Everywhere in the square, people were hurrying about their business, and the clamor of voices filled the air. Vendors and shopkeepers bargained over fruit and olives with women in long white dresses and sandals. Children raced about chasing balls and boxing with each other. Important-looking men dictated to scribes who sat cross-legged on the ground and scratched out their words on long rolls of papyrus. And slaves struggled to carry the merchandise their masters had heaped into their arms. He seemed very serene amid the activity. He'd been standing in the same spot for hours now, without once growing restless or sitting to rest. Around him, as always, was a group of young Athenian men. They were all watching him intently. Even when someone else spoke, the rest kept their eyes on him, the barefoot old man in the ragged cloak. He would speak sometimes, and then they would be very quiet, very still, as if they mustn't miss a single word or nuance. Then one of the young men would respond, arguing passionately, gesturing with his hands, and finally, in confusion, running his hand through his hair and sighing. And then the old man would speak again, and then there would be laughter. He didn't look like an Athenian, standing amid the lean, handsome, well-dressed youth of his prosperous city. He looked at first glance like a rock among emeralds. In this city that so admired beauty, he was known for his ugliness. He was short and stout, with a broad nose, thick lips, and prominent eyes. But inside this plain and coarse rock was a sparkling diamond. Hidden behind the worn-out cloak, the clumsy body, and the homely face, was the soul of Socrates. Mathematics, poetry, music, politics, or business, law, geometry, astronomy. Socrates.
He knew nothing.
To understand the human soul. The human soul. The human soul. To understand the human soul, the purpose of life, and the meaning of truth. The meaning of truth.
Socrates was supposed to be at home carving stone. He was supposed to be chipping away with his chisel at hard, stubborn pieces of rock. Socrates had no school, no classes, and no salary. No school, no school, no school, no school, no school, no classes, and no salary. No salary, no school, no school, no school, no school, no school, no classes, and no salary. No salary. He preferred to chip away at ignorance. He preferred to chip away at ignorance. First his own. First his own. First his own. First his own. And then others. First his own. First his own. First his own. And then others.
This was a constant frustration to his wife. A constant frustration to his wife. This was a constant frustration to his wife. Constant frustration to his method. Early on, Socrates dedicated himself full-time to pursuing wisdom method, but he felt that although he often wondered about truth, he didn't really understand it. So he decided to find the men in Athens whom he supposed were the wisest, and to question them to assure himself they knew more than he did. After many discussions with these men, he decided he was in fact wiser, because he knew nothing, whereas they, even though as ignorant as he, believed they were wise. Socrates developed the habit of pondering his questions and ideas for hours at a time in an almost trance-like state. Trance-like state. Trance-like state. He was in fact wiser. He knew nothing. Nothing. He knew nothing. Particularly authority figures. Well, if you believe
is true. That be true. This is true. That be true. This is true. Correct. This is true. That be true. This is true. That be true. To understand the human soul. The human soul. The human soul. The Socratic method. To understand the human soul, the purpose of life, and the meaning of truth. Therefore, he could teach simply by asking questions. Socrates believed that within every individual are the resources to answer questions correctly. The truth is there and needs only to be uncovered. Is there. The truth is there and needs only to be uncovered. Socrates used this method of discussion not just with students, but with anyone who challenged him, including some of the leaders of Athens. Because their reasoning was so often flawed to begin with, a discussion with Socrates could often lead to frustration and embarrassment. This wasn't his goal. His goal was to clear out outmoded ways of thinking and to encourage people to reason their way towards truth. His goal was to help people to realize their own ignorance. To that end, he would challenge anyone with a pretense of knowledge. The Athenian youth who gathered about Socrates began to reevaluate their own lives and commit to a higher, more spiritual ideal.